Good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for inviting me today to talk about our Living Museum project in Jordan, and apologies for having to record this because of the difference in timing between your zone and our time here in the UK, which appeared to be like 6 a.m. in the morning, our time, and it was a bit difficult to do it live. So I'm really delighted to be here and record this presentation today. My name is Dr. Gehan Selim, and I'm an associate professor of architecture and urbanism at the University of Leeds. And the talk today is shared with Dr. Andrew Holland as well, who is a research fellow in digital heritage at the University of Leeds as well. And he has been supporting the Living Museum project in Jordan for about more than 2 years now. So thanks a lot for giving me the time to do the presentation today. The title of the presentation is Creating the Living Museum for Sustainable Development of the Past in Jordan. So why the concept of digital heritage, and what does it mean for us? And we understand the concept of heritage, which has developed over time. On the one hand, making the difference between tangible and intangible more and more blurred, and on the other, by highlighting the importance of the active role of people in their everyday built environment. Digital technologies at the same time have become increasingly important. First of all, because they are on the integral part of the everyday life as we see it, and second, because they offer new ways of viewing information. Like in particular, for example, the different forms of mixed reality allow the superimposition of information of different nature of architectural heritage without interfering with its materiality. And this is by acting only in the dimension of the visual. In academic and practical terms, the use of digital technologies of us for heritage analysis, recording, reconstruction, display and transmission to future generations at the forefront of interdisciplinary innovation. And it has proven to be a key assistant, particularly in contexts where heritage is at risk of disappearance, like the site I'm going to talk about in a minute, or has already been destroyed or damaged by war, conflict, climate change, earthquakes, environmental disasters, and other harmful events as well. So, in addition to that, the use of new media, technological platforms, and digital software and tools like digital modeling, immersive and augmented reality, creating virtual exhibitions and site tours, mobile apps, and so can actually provide cultural institutions and museums, governmental bodies, academic institutions, and other stakeholders with digital alternatives to physical heritage preservation and enjoyment at the same time. And by increasing also the heritage awareness of sites like this and accessibility. So for us, actually starting from all these concepts, our presentation today presents a reflection on the concept of digital heritage as a distinct research discourse, for example, through a theoretical approach that finds the use of digital technologies a necessary condition, but also at the same time rises from new opportunity for heritage interpretation and presentation, where people and artifacts interact together, and in particular through smart devices. So according to this context, the concept of historical, cultural, and aesthetic values take on central role, and the digital allows the rise of an ecosystem where people play a central role in defining these values. And to apply the idea of digitization to architectural and urban heritage, it is necessary also to root the discourse in their own tangible and intangible characteristics, like different forms of kinds of cultural heritage and built heritage, for example, like archaeological heritage and many others. So moving a little bit now to the Living Museum of Qais project. In the coming 15 minutes, I'll just present some insights on these issues derived from the project that has been funded by the United Kingdom Arts and Humanities Research Council, which was titled The Living Museum of Qais in Jordan, where we're looking at tentative World Heritage Site in Qais in Jordan, and the project is led by the University of Leeds in partnership with the Jordan University of Science and Technology and Nottingham Trent University since February 2019 to date. In this work, we sought to explore digital interfaces and multimedia platforms, which were used to transform perceptions of the local community in Qais into a more active agent in the construction of collective memory. We also sought to use digital heritage tools to reconnect the displaced local community to its former village and the larger heritage values that also still present there until today. And to explore this question, we established a strategy for digital recording and documentation that integrated links of habitation and tradition across eras, from an ancient to a medieval to the present day. And the central argument we made is that digital technologies hold the potential to alter the cultural heritage industry. So, for example, it is now possible for the public to actively produce material for heritage collections through digital platforms. But in such a digital landscape, it is essential to understand how multimodal participatory media may be altering the construction of collective memory at the same time. We also aim to understand how participation in digital content, co-creation, social documentation are changing practices for collective remembrance. So there are two central questions involved in our work, which is the main umbrella that we have been working under, is how are digital platforms reshaping cultural heritage and its usage? And what implications do such platforms and practices have on memory construction in a digital landscape? Here, the Jordanian, let me talk a little bit about the site, the tentative World Heritage Site of Qais, which is located 120 kilometers north of Amman in Jordan. And its proximity to the Yarmouk River granted the site a unique significance among the other Roman cities of their Eastern Mediterranean region. The early accounts of the village of Qais refer to a settlement named Mikis, which is a name the locals still use until today. The Greeks, Roman, Byzantines, and Ottomans left their own marks there. Remains of the city still show theaters, baths, vaulted shops, tombs, and carving. Qais and the remains of the ancient city of Gadara were registered on the UNESCO World Heritage Tentative List in 2001. And for years, the site was also a key destination for both domestic and international tourists, which added significantly to the local economy of the community there. However, the recent conflict in Syria led to severe reduction in tourism, which continues to limit the site's socioeconomic potential. There was an effort to protect the ancient remains, and the Jordanian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities relocated much of the local community who were living there for years and years from its historic Ottoman-era village during the 1980s, which are the houses that we see here in the back of this image. And although the ministry had a good intention and well-intentioned act for the relocation, but the act itself broke the local community's connection to the traditional practices of architecture, economy, and urban space. And as a result, the site is now at risk of physical deterioration, and it's becoming increasingly likely that the local knowledge and expertise in heritage protection will also be lost in that place. In addition, the village's built fabric of Ottoman-era houses and shops suffered from neglect, physical deterioration, and this in turn compromised its historical spatial integrity and resulted in a loss of much of its cultural value. The loss of appreciation and awareness of the site's importance within the local community, and more recently, a sharp decline in the local tourist economy due to the conflict in the nearby Syria, which has further endangered the site as well. So 30 years on from this incident of the relocation, the community And since the community has been displaced, many of this community's cultural apologies, cultural practices and traditions and rituals were also disappearing. An entire generation, which are basically aged less than 30 years old, has now grown up without even having lived there and only know of life in the old village through their parents' storytelling. The reproduction of cultural habits and the practices related to the site has ceased, and large parts of this culture and history are now becoming increasingly remote, drifting ever further out of the active cultural and social memory. So we worked closely with those people and young people as a team and with members of the local families who can still remember having once lived in the village, or as also who have inherited casual and traditional accounts of life there from older siblings, sisters, brothers, families. And actually, these allowed us to weave narratives that created a generic picture of economic, social, administrative, and ideological realities. And this understanding as well helped explain aspects of the Ottoman village tangible and intangible heritage and the way its residents lived with and around Gadara's ancient architectural remains. While this work in place, we designed a methodology that allowed digital heritage tools to create a detailed record of the relationships between the archaeological and sociocultural aspects of Qais, and so reflected their interconnected of these layers of history. So here our work included two investigations. First, we aim to revitalize the community's sense of place and interest in their heritage, and in doing so, support sustainable heritage approaches that benefit the local community and ensure protection for all aspects of the site's past. Second has been to reconstruct a sense of the everyday cultural heritage that once linked the local community to its heritage. So we have been bringing local community members to their old houses in Harit al-Fuqa, for example, and interviewing them on site. This has also been of great assistance in terms of connecting historical, social, and cultural aspects of their memories to the realities of the place and its history. Through digital storytelling, the community reflected on their individual interpretation and memories of their living spaces. They reflected on their traditions and everyday practices, and as such, we understand authenticity as an embodied experience and emotional attachment to a place derived from everyday practices of youth generations. Also, stories of the community were recorded and digitized using QR codes, which could be scanned to take the viewer to a digital platform linked to the community stories and narratives. We also used surveys of research data, archaeological evidence, and generated scanned models of the site to produce a credible layout of historic Gadara's spatial structures, its buildings layout and infrastructure, including overlaying archaeological and spatial data and imaging of the site on a custom-designed ArcGIS software to demonstrate chronological transformation into the Ottoman village. We also developed integrated virtual environments that incorporated researched, archived, and surveyed datasets to offer 3D interactive virtual environments to support, which has been supported by infographics and digitized archaeological databases to use and to inform the sustainable conservation of the site and make the scientific and archaeological data more accessible to public and non-specialized users. To integrate as well the two domains of the digital and the heritage, we delivered capacity building and training workshops on data gathering techniques targeted at the local community, heritage professionals, and local young people. This also included training in how to run spatial surveys, record social and cultural narratives and oral histories, and use analytical processes to untangle the complicated histories of the site of Qais. The work also heavily relied on the production of online content that helped us to develop a website that now hosts a digital archive of Qais, which includes interactive VR environments, 360 visualization, drone imaging, and interviews and short films developing digital story maps, and more. We also created a network of local community volunteers who are further enhancing that digital platform and adding to it like all the time with the collection of interviews and resources around the intangible heritage of Qais, and also ensuring the lived experience and daily cultural practices of the community that built and lived in the Ottoman village are protected and maintained for the future. Overall, our methodology in this project, we implemented in that project, we enabled the community in Qais to go beyond collective memory and also become more analytical of the basis for identities they already hold. The project activities and outputs had several positive aspects. First of all, they captured the community's interest and imagination and allowed visualizing narratives of buildings or sites using new media for the first time. The second is that they enabled moving in the virtual representation of historical sites to seek sources of evidence that allowed them to make conclusions on the basis of evidence, making their own judgments and build their own conclusions, and realizing which inquiry process or historical concept they are working on. The third aspect of that is that they learned from non-symbolic first group experience and were encouraged and required to collaborate and provide a social atmosphere. Each activity we presented and provided and implemented in this project had a specific content, knowledge, focus, that can communicate the diverse historical influences on modern society. And the focus here was not on simply reading factual information about history or culture, but to look around, to move from place to another, and to question preconceptions, and for the youngsters to construct their own understanding and opinion from the evidence of different influences. To wrap up and disseminate some of the work that we have done in this project, we had a really amazing flagship exhibition on the site of Qais back in 15th of November, just like 6 weeks ago, where we had displayed multiple aspects of the work. We have displayed stories, digital stories, and digital storytelling accounts of the community. We had an amazing, fascinating display of the interactive VR model of the site and the basilica and many parts of the Roman Gadara area, which has been translated in English and in Arabic as well. So it was presented in both languages, and visitors were able to display that and interact with it on site. As I mentioned as well, we have many of this outputs and material on our website. It's called Qais Heritage website, and you can see here the address for that, www.qaisheritage.com. So I would just encourage everyone to have a look at that. Still, we are updating and adding more information to this as well, but you can really engage with a lot of the storytelling and the digital outputs that we have created out of this project, and to see how the tangible and intangible heritage could merge together nicely to give that kind of non-invasive protection of the site in some way. Also, feel free to visit our Facebook and Twitter account as well, where we keep producing and adding new updates on the project progression. I'll just have to stop here and thank everybody for listening. Apologies for the recording once again if it's a boring presentation, but really I would have loved to be there among you all. But I wish to thank everyone once again, and kind regards. Thank you.